I feel like this is one of those times where our webinar guest doesn't really need an introduction, because you'll all know this person from the amazing work they did at Environment Hamilton, and now the fantastic work that they lead at the City of Hamilton, at the Office of Climate Change Initiatives. It is Lynda Lukasik joining us as our guest for this Hamilton 350 webinar, and we're going to be talking about what the City of Hamilton has been up to. So thank you, Linda, for taking the time to come speak with all of us tonight and all the folks who will be watching this on YouTube later.
That's great. Thanks so much, Lucia. And it's always so nice to feel like it's kindred spirits, right? It's always so nice to come and talk to all of you. And I just want to say generally, thank you to all of you for your ongoing support in various ways for the work that we're trying to, well, that we're all trying to collectively move forward. It's so important to continue to stand together and move the marker forward as much as we can. I'm also going to share too that at about seven, probably around 7:30, another one of the members of the Office of Climate Change Initiatives is going to be joining us, and that's Amy Angelo. And some of you may know Amy. She's prior to coming, she's recent to the city and our team. Prior to that, she worked with the Neighbor to Neighbor Center and has been very involved in the Hamilton the food garden network, community garden network. Um, she just had some duties at home to deal with before she could jump in. So what I'm going to do tonight, I've been asked to come and talk to you a little bit more about the 2025 round of climate change reserve projects, city-led projects that were recommended to receive funding. And hot off the presses, I can now say, as of the council meeting today, those were all approved. It did go, they kind of pulled it out of the GIC, General Issues Committee minutes, and there was somebody must have requested that. There was a council vote on the report's recommendations, and a majority of councillors, not all, but a majority of them did support the recommendation. So the projects that I'm going to quickly run through with you today are now all approved and will be they've been approved to receive that funding, and they will now all be moving forward. So I do have a slide deck. I'm going to fess up and tell you it's been recycled. I just updated the title page, but it's what I shared at General Issues Committee last week, because we did give a very quick presentation to the General Issues Committee, which is all of council, and there was a chance for them to ask some questions. So is it
Bef-
okay? Oh,
I was gonna say, right before you jump into that, just
yeah,
in case there's anyone who's not fully up on their council watching, can we talk a little bit about what these projects are, and just maybe a quick
sure.
climate change
Yeah.
reserve primer?
Yeah. Thank you, Lucia. Yeah, great suggestion. So for those who aren't aware, since about 2018, 2019, the city of Hamilton has had a climate change reserve, but it was not until 2023 that that reserve had a sustainable source of funding. So we have a climate change reserve, and in the 2023 budget cycle, there was a proposal that was approved by council to fund that reserve to the tune of about $2.5 million a year, and it's funded through the general tax levy. Um, and so if anyone is interested, I can share there is a formal policy that guides the climate change reserve and what it's intended to be used for. At the broadest level, it's about supporting actions that help to realize the goal, the city's climate goals. So essentially it's designed to help facilitate implementation of Hamilton's climate action strategy, I think is the simplest way to put it. Um, I'm trying to think of what else I should share about it. I think worth noting, because it's levy funded, we do have this ongoing possibility, and there was a motion as part of the 2025 budget process. There was an attempt to see that levy funding end. Not sure where we're headed this year, but I'm sharing that up front just to share with all of you the realities of this kind of funding, and what can happen with political cycles and tough budget years. So we are definitely in a tough budget year. Fingers crossed, we'll be good on this front. But for now, this is the projects that I'm going to share with you now. It's the third round that we've been through for city-led projects, and I think also fair to say, with a couple of exceptions, the bulk of the spending so far has been on city-led initiatives. But part of the reason, or the main reason why wanted Angelo to join us later, is because this year we also secured support in the form of $100,000 in climate change reserve funding to start to pilot a neighborhood climate action small grants program. So Amy is a project manager on our team, and she's working away on developing the parameters for that program. And I said to her, "Oh, you should come tonight and share that." And we'll certainly be seeking input from people on the community side so that we make sure we get the framework for that program right. And just so you also understand, um, the reserve was set up in a way where the general manager of planning and economic development, and that's the department that we sit in, has delegated authority to approve up to $250,000 in funding for projects from the reserve that help with core pieces. So for us, this has been helpful for the work that our office does. So for instance, in 2025, there was a $75,000 allocation to support the city community co-design of a climate justice framework, and that work is underway. But that's also how we secured the $100,000 for the Neighborhood Climate Action Small Grants Program. That's now we're busily working on to make reality, and we're aiming for the first intake to happen in 2026. Is
Great.
there?
Thanks for all that context. And Amy, don't worry, I see you on the
Oh,
call.
is
We're
she
going to
there? Oh,
jump to you
excellent.
later.
Good. Okay, great. Glad you're here, Amy. Would it be helpful if I just, the deck I put together was for like a 5-minute presentation to GIC. Would that be helpful for people if I just walk through that quickly and then you can ask questions if you have any?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. That sounds great. Go ahead, Linda. And for folks who
Okay.
have questions, feel free to pop them in the chat or raise your hand, and I'll start facilitating some questions after Linda's done her presentation.
Okay. So hoping you can all see this, and I will try to, um, sorry, whenever the bar comes across the top, I'm no longer, okay, I'm going to just put it into the full slideshow mode. So I updated my cover slide just, because I thought it would be nice to be able to tell all of you, hey, it's confirmed to receive funding, no longer recommended. Um, so yeah, as I said, that was at council today that happened. So just very quickly, so you're all aware, just in the way of a little bit of background, um, for those internal city-led projects, we have an application template that we keep on refining with each year. And we go through a process of reviewing and scoring through a smaller little working committee. And new this year in comparison to past years. In past years, it was several city directors who are active on our internal climate change initiative steering committee who've taken on that task of reviewing and scoring. And I always participate too in my role as a director in that process. This year, we had volunteers from our climate change advisory committee participate in that process as well, because rightfully the advisory committee expressed strong interest in what was being funded through the climate change reserve and wanted to be more engaged earlier in the process. So that was how we made that happen. We had members from that committee come in and participate, and we'll be doing the same again next year. So just very quickly, just in terms of what's considered in assessment of projects, we want to see projects that comply with the climate change reserve policy, support, staff applicants have to show how what they're proposing supports actions found in Hamilton's climate action strategy. Where it's a mitigation project, we want to see them estimating greenhouse gas emissions reduction, and we share some, calculator tools to help people to be able to do that if they've never had to do that before. And then we like them to share qualitative and or quantitative measure of enhanced climate resilience for any adaptation projects. We also ask them about, we explain what it is, and we ask staff about co-benefits. Are there any other positive outcomes from the action you're taking? And I always, one of the simplest examples is, if you shift from, fossil fuel powered vehicle to EV, you're going to see some air quality improvements as a co-benefit. We have a question that very specifically starts to speak to community climate justice, and we ask people to speak to that with what they're proposing. Ideally, we want projects that benefit people who are most impacted. at a minimum, we want projects that aren't going to do harm to people who are more vulnerable to climate impacts. And then in this round, we did identify some strategic priority focus areas. And for that, it was really conversations around, where are we at with implementation of Hamilton's climate action strategy? Are there categories of actions where we're just not moving as much as we want to? And can we kind of boost some areas through projects that are being submitted by staff through the internal application round? So those are some of the key things that we considered. And then here is our list of projects for this year that are now successfully funded. And the first one is a portable charging unit for Hamilton Fire Department's electric fire truck, which has been procured and is due to arrive. The last update I heard was that they expect delivery before this calendar year is over. So that's a big step for Hamilton Fire. This will be their first all-electric fire truck. And the portable charger will help them with keeping it charged up and ready to go. And I just want to say with this one, one really interesting co-benefit is that elimination of diesel emissions. And you imagine firefighters and the exposure that they're dealing with already, not to mention, going into communities where other people can be exposed. So that's a really nice co-benefit. Hamilton Public Library has been granted $500,000 to launch an electric bookmobile. They propose a really interesting project where they're calling it an eco-literacy mobile, and it's changed a little bit. So I just want to update you on that. The original vision, they've got a very large bookmobile. I think it's diesel powered, and they wanted to shift that over to EV. The direction that they're going in now is that they'll use this funding in combination with other funding that they've got in place. And they're going to be purchasing two smaller sized buses that will both be electric. And my understanding is that will facilitate their ability to retire both of their fossil fuel powered bookmobiles. So it's a neat transition, but it also includes paying some attention to helping people to understand the technology. So, having information on these vehicles so that anyone visiting the bookmobile will understand that HPL has made this shift and they'll understand why. They're talking about solar panels on the roofs of these vehicles to provide some power, but also, animating so that people understand why. The piece that I'm also really excited about, and you may all want to keep in mind, is they're also looking at this as a really important way to raise awareness about city programs, the work that not-for-profits and other organizations might be doing around environment, sustainability, climate. So they're envisioning it as a really effective way to get into neighborhoods with information. So you can imagine, I'm already thinking, oh my gosh, this is going to be an incredible tool for us, for instance, with our neighborhood climate action small grants program. If we really want to get the word out at the neighborhood level, having information on these vehicles and maybe even, having a staff person go on a round of visits to talk to community members directly will be really helpful. So great program. The next is $110,000 to our procurement division at the city. They approached us with this pitch. They now have a senior project manager focused on special projects. So they've had a vision for a while around more socially responsible procurement, but they, like us, see the importance of equity, justice, climate, green procurement. They're all bundled together. So this funding will support them with the sort of foundational phase of figuring out a framework to shift the city over to more ethical, broadly more ethical procurement. Um, and for us, this is a really great piece because it's one of the enabling actions very closely coupled with our carbon budget and accounting framework efforts in Hamilton's climate action strategy. So we know those two need to work together, right? Like staff are going to be paying attention to, how does decision X compare to decision Y on, climate impact. And then when we get to the procurement stage, how is that going to facilitate the kind of decision making we need to see happen? And here the hope is that it's not going to just be about what typically and historically has happened with procurement. The lowest price might win out. It's striking the right balance between all of those important considerations. We also provided some support, smaller in comparison to the other grants, but this is what they asked for. So the Transportation Division uses a variety of battery-operated hand tools, maintenance tools. This funding will help them to transition 30% of the tools that they have over to battery, and they'll do some piloting with these tools, with that ultimate vision of shifting completely over to the rechargeable alternatives, and getting rid of those um, fossil fuel powered tools that a lot of which they're using now, with some benefits like quieter operation, elimination of greenhouse gas emissions and other air pollutants. So that's going to be an interesting one just to see how it goes. The next one is, this is from our Parks Division, and they've requested funding for an innovative type of solar lighting. And not to get, I don't understand all the technical details about lighting, but the way this has been described to us is that in some parks, they have challenges with providing lighting. And so this particular method um, enables them, it gives them more flexibility in getting lighting installed in park spaces. So for this funding, they'll be providing solar powered lighting in 5 park locations, 2 which currently don't have any lighting at all, and 3 where existing lighting systems are going to be swapped out for the solar powered alternative. The next project on our list is a pilot backyard tree planting program, and this is our friends in forestry and horticulture. And I will also point out that they're doing this project in partnership with the Hamilton Naturalist Club. They're already partnered on our annual tree giveaway, where the naturalists really help to make the community side of ordering and facilitating that whole pickup process work more effectively for people. So this project, it's a 3-year pilot. And they will plant 50 trees, 50 trees per year. I mean, we've had some people asking that, for that amount of money, that's not a lot of trees. So what I want to make sure people understand is that with this program, it's a focus on planting trees in backyards of willing homeowners. And the priority will be placed on neighborhoods that have very low urban tree canopy cover. So, I'm just going to tell you that means it's going to very likely mean those lower city neighborhoods, many, closer to the industrial core that tend to have low canopy cover. And they'll be larger caliper trees, so a little bit more costly than, the $10 or $15 tree that you get in the annual tree giveaway. So it'll require, the city and the Naturalist Club coming in and having to help with getting these trees planted. And what they're intending to do is they're building a whole program around this pilot that will include supporting homeowners, first finding, people who are willing to have a tree planted, and then supporting them with getting the tree properly planted, and then supporting them along the way with properly stewarding their new tree so that it thrives. And they're also going to use this as an opportunity in the neighborhoods that they're getting into to make people aware of all of the other tree programs the city has, whether it's that free tree giveaway or the street tree program, or there are opportunities to do community tree plantings in city-owned properties in and around a given neighborhood. So they'll use this program to promote those pieces as well. And then the last initiative is City Housing Hamilton. I love this one, I have to say. It's a social housing townhouse complex up on Hamilton Mountain. It's very close to the Neighbor to Neighbor Food Center. And the proposal here, and I believe the $500,000 that we've provided is covering about 28% of the funding. So City Housing Hamilton is very good at tapping into various funders to make good things happen. And they're transforming this existing townhouse complex so that they're taking out methane gas powered furnaces that are currently heating these units. They're putting in air source heat pumps. They're transitioning over the hot water heater systems as well. And then they're also installing solar photovoltaics on the roofs of all of these buildings. So they'll be generating renewable energy on site. I always like to emphasize for people, and City Housing Hamilton did this in their application as well. In this case, this transition to air source heat pumps means that for many of these people whose units don't currently have any cooling, this project will give every unit cooling with that air source heat pump. So really important shift here in a social housing complex to give people you know, low carbon, efficient heating and cooling. So those are the projects. Maybe I'll pause here. I don't know if we want, if people want to ask any questions now. There are a couple more slides too, that'll just give you a sense, and I'm happy to also share a link to the report that we presented. But um, each year we also provide very brief updates on projects that were funded in previous years with updates on progress or project completion. But maybe I'll pause in case anybody has questions they want to raise about any of these.
There are three questions in the chat if we want to take
Okay.
those now. So the first one came from Dave Carson. He was asking about the electric fire truck portable charging unit, whether or not
Hmm.
it is like, is it a mobile battery pack or is it fossil fuel powered like generator?
Yeah, my understanding is it's not fossil fuel powered. So I mean I think you do still have to plug it in, but it's easily movable, is my understanding.
Gotcha.
If that
So
makes
yeah,
sense? Yeah.
it sounds like it's not going to run on fossil fuels,
No.
unfortunately, and as our next comment kind of alludes to, there are still upstream emissions from the fact that Ontario's grid is getting dirtier, which is really
Yes.
just awful, moving in the wrong direction. But I think so. Acknowledging comment number two here from Kenrick about the fact that, even electrifying as the province moves backwards in its grid, the benefits are sort of undercut. And
Yeah.
man, it really grinds my gears. But
Yeah.
I think that, I'm sure, Linda, the answer that you'll probably give is that unfortunately we don't have local control over that. We can bolster the amount of renewable energy being put back into the grid here in Hamilton, but at a provincial level, unfortunately, we don't. I don't even know if we get intervener status anymore as the like
Yeah.
long-term procurement happens.
Yeah, that's a good question. Maybe one thing that you would all be interested in keeping tapped into is I know that there still is some regional level planning around the grid, for instance. And there are opportunities there for sure for people to weigh in on how they think, the increasing demand needs to be accommodated. And I have seen through IESO conversations in other regions around non-wire solutions, and those are the sorts of things we need to be talking about as opposed to, what you're talking about, Lucia, because I agree with everyone who's frustrated by that. Those emission factors with each year are increasing because of the gas plants that are feeding into the grid. And I've said to others on the climate team, it feels like we're all working so hard, right? And these provincial decisions are dragging us backwards. And you're right. I mean, in the current context, we don't have a lot of control, but it feels like more and more there are opportunities to have local discussions around how could we be doing things differently. We need to reach out to players like Electra, and there are other innovators locally who are trying to figure out how can we head in more progressive directions with an energy transition, including a next generation grid. And that, you know, when you think about that, a big part of that is decentralization, and I think that empowers local communities to start to think about, what are those alternatives? How do we tap into more renewable energy? What kinds of conversations do we need to be having about storage so that these systems are going to work for us? But that's an important piece for sure. That I think we need to figure out how to get more dialogue going on that front.
And then the final question in the chat here from Brody is, are there any honorable mentions who didn't receive funding?
Yeah, so I'll be honest with all of you. We do get applications internally that don't receive funding. And I expect that's going to continue to be the case over time, and we'll continue to try to do a better job giving staff guidance on the sorts of things that are likely to be successful. One thing that's happening, and I think this is a good thing, is that as time goes on with each year, um, there are shifts that we're all looking at as, oh, hey, wait a minute, that's really low hanging fruit, and everybody should be doing that now, right? So pitches like that where people say, that really doesn't seem like it's a good fit. And then I think in other instances, it's, we get projects pitched to us that maybe just don't have the detail that we need. And, we follow up and we try to figure out, you know, what the pitch is all about. And some of them, I'm just going to say, some of them just the applications aren't as solid as others. So it's a mix of things that happen. And then we also, with each funding cycle, we've only got a certain amount of money. So we do sometimes get very large asks as well, where there ends up being some conversation around, is it appropriate that so much of the annual allocation will go towards just this one thing, especially if the request is for 100% of the funding, or should we be looking at, spreading it out and seeing more projects move forward? Yeah. So I
I
hope that
see.
helps to answer the question, Brody.
I see a question from Dawn, but I think I'm going to hold that off, and because it's
Okay.
sort of a bigger question, until the end of your presentation, Linda. So if
Okay.
you wouldn't
Yeah.
mind just going through the rest of it, then I'll look
Sure.
back.
Yeah, just a couple more quick slides just to give you a sense of what else has happened in 2025. So this is what I was talking about just in terms of the general manager's delegated authority. And these are the two initiatives that received support this year from the reserve through that process. And then finally, you may all already be aware that when we did our annual update in July, we council supported a recommendation around the allocation of $100,000 in reserve funding to support an ongoing exploration of acceleration of our net zero target in combination with updating, including updating the low carbon scenario for our community and also updating Hamilton's climate action strategy. So obviously 100,000 is not going to cover all of the costs. So we are also actively applying for funding through sources like the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. There is a provincial grant through Ministry of Energy as well that we're preparing an application for, and other sources just to help us to cobble together the full budget that we need to move that work forward. And we'll definitely be reaching out to all of you with more detail in 2026 around community engagement and what that process of updating and accelerating is going to look like. And then in this latest update report, we also shared it was in 2023, we had a council motion that allocated some climate change reserve funding. Um, and some of you may remember this. It happened when the Biodiversity Action Plan, I think it was a meeting where there was approval being sought by staff to be able to go out and consult the community on the plan. So $200,000 was allocated to support the update of Hamilton's natural areas inventory, and that process is ongoing. And it's a core partnership between the city, the Hamilton Conservation Authority, which I hope continues to exist as the Hamilton Conservation Authority well into the future, Hamilton Naturalist Club, and then some other partners. Administered through the Conservation Authority is kind of the administrative support for this initiative. And then as well, $150,000 was allocated to the city's Natural Areas Acquisition Fund. And that fund provides support to conservation organizations in the community who are trying to acquire land for natural areas for ongoing protection and enhancement. So I can tell you in our report, we updated council on two requests that were made to that fund, one from the Hamilton Naturalist Club for a parcel and another from the Hamilton Conservation Authority. And that fund continues to have a balance in it. And we are actively reminding our conservation partners that if they need support, they can come back to it. They can ask for a maximum of $50,000 from that fund. The climate reserve provided 150,000. There's additional funding sitting in that acquisition fund through an allocation made just through the Planning and Economic Development Department. So this is a critical piece too to help just get more important natural spaces protected in the municipality. And then this is just the text of the recommendations that were in front of council. So just so you all know, it was a grand total of just over $1.5 million that was allocated for projects this year. And then, of course, we always just have to get them to receive the information that we provided on some of the other allocations. And that's it for my presentation. So I'm going to stop sharing so we can all easily see each other.
So let
Um,
me go back to Dawn's question after a topical one from Dave, and then we'll hop in with John. I see all your questions in the chat here. So Dave
okay.
Carson was asking about, he says, there was a retrofit pilot 1 or 2 years ago. What were the results? Um, Dave, I don't know if you want to provide more information on which retrofit. Is it the one at, there was one at the Castle Lodge, I believe, last year. There's the Better Homes Hamilton retrofit, which is still ongoing. Which retrofit project?
It was the one that Lynda presented
Hi,
at
Dave.
the cathedral to us. I think it
Oh
was
gosh.
individual housing.
I wonder if that's the Better Homes is it the Better Homes Hamilton pilot, Dave,
Yes,
where we were
yes,
offering the interest-free loans?
yes.
Yeah, so that pilot is ongoing, and we've got um, some homeowners, people who were applied and were selected to be part of the pilot. There are a number of them who have now completed their retrofits and some who are still going through the process. But I can tell you that in 2026, we'll be circling back to council with a report on the pilot project, and just, reporting back and sharing what we learned through the pilot. But also, the commitment that we've made is to also go back to council and talk to them about next steps, including scale up and what could that look like. So if anyone's interested in that sort of larger scale, how do we deal with the existing building stock? Even if we're just talking about the huge number of residential homes, singles and semis and towns that need to be retrofitted, never mind anything else. We're certainly eager to hear from people around, if you're aware of other communities where they've figured out how to scale up. That's the piece we're grappling with now, and paying a lot of attention to other Ontario municipalities and beyond, and how they're approaching that piece. So watch for a report, and maybe we can make sure that you all are made aware when that report on the pilot is in front of council. But that'll definitely be happening in 2026.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So let me move next to the question from Don. He was asking about OCCI becoming more engaged in public education, advocacy. He said here, for example, would it make sense for OCCI to try to emphasize messaging from the current Global Climate Office? And can you be actively educating the public about increasing GHG emissions from provincial energy decisions? So I think thinking about your role as an interface to the public about some of these bigger energy transition topics.
Yeah, yeah, great question, Dawn. And I always feel like we're sort of on a tightrope, right? Just in terms of, our role in the city in monitoring, raising awareness about Hamilton's climate action strategy, but also, how do we respond sitting where we're sitting to all of these other challenges and barriers that we're facing. And I'm going to say I know we're more limited than the rest of you in terms of being very vocal advocates, reacting to what is happening at other levels of government. Although I will say we have regular opportunities, we just submitted comments to the planning division staff who are consolidating all of the staff responses to Bill 60, right? So we do, and we're in the midst of very quickly trying to prepare responses to the proposals to consolidate conservation authorities. So we do weigh in there, and we tend to be a team that will, and others. I'm going to say there are other divisions that are also pretty direct with their comments. So in that way, we do. Although I'm just going to express a whole lot of cynicism around all of these comments that are being prepared, because I fear that they move on to the province through the environmental registry process, and I'm not convinced that it's having an impact there. I think what it does is it communicates to our council and hopefully to anybody from the community who's following that we're all paying attention and we're all concerned about these shifts. So that's one way. And Don, I agree with you. I think I know that we're all actively engaged in conversation around how can we be more effective in communicating out to the broader community. Um, we did some work internally this year as well, because I'll be honest, I believe there's still more to be done to ensure that city staff have a full grasp of who we are and why Hamilton's climate action strategy is important. So we did a chunk of work this year, doing learning sessions with different teams of staff, and then customizing those sessions so that we pointed out to different staff teams how Hamilton's climate action strategy has actions that are directly relevant to them and their work. I think we do need to do more beyond just responding to invitations like this one when we're asked. So would definitely be interested in your suggestions around how we could do that. I know one piece, and we were actually just on a climate advisory committee working group session with Lucia and others, not long before this call. One piece that we're actively talking about is a public facing dashboard and a report card, an easily digestible report card for public. And so we're thinking about pieces like that so that it's easier to engage public, because we're finding it's challenging, right? So we're constantly experimenting with different ways of putting information out there so that people start to think about, how is climate change affecting me? And I'm guessing you can all relate to this. It's not always, if you just jump into a conversation about climate action or the climate emergency with most people, it's like, oh, they're not necessarily seeing how it's relevant to them. And then they might go on to talk about, oh my gosh, um, they'll talk about an extreme storm or their basement flooded, and they're not necessarily connecting the dots. So yeah, I'm going to say we need to do more work on that, and always happy to take suggestions from community members about how we could be doing that more effectively.
Thanks. One last question here about the possibility of renewable energy, and then I'd love to hear more from Amy about the
Yeah.
neighborhood small grants. But just very quickly, something that based on John Kirk's question and also other discussions that we've had around here. There are examples of other cities around the world investing directly as a city in renewable energy and then lowering energy prices within their city or even just for the city to use and to reduce their own emissions. What does the
Mhm.
landscape look like in Hamilton in terms of, we have this Hamilton Renewable Power Inc., whose only holding is that methane capture. What possibilities do you think might exist here in Hamilton for us to look at procuring renewable energy?
Yeah, there definitely are other possibilities. If you're not following this yet, um, make sure you're tuning into the waste management division of the city. They're the solid waste management master plan. They're consulting on that right now. They're also doing work on an organics management strategy. And if you look at Hamilton's climate action strategy, it's very much focused on how do we take that curbside organic waste and potentially beyond that source of organic waste, and look at ways to generate more renewable natural gas. So that's one piece. And I'll tell you right now, I look at Hamilton's climate action strategy and modeling into the future and assumptions around diversion rates, right, of that organic waste. And I want to say, sadly, we're only at something like 40%. We want to get more of that organic waste. We don't want it going to the landfill. We want it out and used. We want it used for other purposes. I mean, right now it's being composted, but there's definitely an active process underway to figure out, what's the best solution moving forward to tap into that RNG production opportunity with the vision of using that to fuel municipal vehicles, garbage trucks, whatever else. So that's one piece. We also have HCE, Hamilton Community. I always forget if it's Energy or Enterprises, but HCE, which runs our district heating system. And they've done lots of work, and you can find information on their website about their exploration of tapping into waste heat. And there's talk generally about how do we decarbonize that centralized system, and how do we expand it. So I think that's an interesting one, and holds potential for the city, because right now, if you look at the district energy system in the downtown core, most of the buildings that are connected to that system are municipally owned buildings. So I think there's potential there. for the municipality maybe to lead the way in making some shifts. There's a pretty good economic case that HCE has for trying to convince uh, private sector developers who are putting up new buildings to tap into that system. So I think that's interesting. And then I'm going to say, our local utility. I think we need to be talking to Electra more about what could and should be happening in Hamilton when it comes to what you're talking about. And I think the municipality could play a part. I think all of us as ratepayers in that system could be speaking up and pushing for innovative things to happen there. And we're starting to hear that Electra is keen to go there. So, again, another opportunity for, I guess, for us all collectively to try to steer the ship in a new, more climate resilient direction.
Great, thanks. Is Amy, are you ready to talk about some of the neighborhood small grant stuff that's new?
Yes, certainly. I would love to. Let me just pull up my notes here. So unlike Linda, I don't have slides. I'm just going to chat with everyone. So it's nice to see some familiar faces. It's nice to meet some of you for the first time. As Linda mentioned, I'm the new project manager responsible for neighborhood level climate initiatives in the OCCI. Um, projects that I'm working on overall include support for community gardens, as Linda mentioned, but also developing or continuing the development and implementation of a neighborhood climate action small grants program. So the purpose of this program, and I think I've talked to a few of you about this before, but it's going to help Hamilton residents to address climate change, specifically adapting and preparing for climate change, with some opportunity for mitigating as well, or lessening their impact. The focus is going to be on bringing community together, though. So through collective action is really going to be a big focus of successful applicants for this grant. We're making progress in the initiating phase. As Linda mentioned, there's $100,000 from the Climate Change Reserve. And the guiding, right now we're working on the guiding principles of the grant. In fact, we had a meeting this afternoon as a team to kind of hash through some of those principles. There's a framework in the works for the grant, how the grant will be administered, and then we'll be developing modules that give clear ideas for eligible projects. But certainly there will also be opportunity for community to apply for projects that are not represented in a module. We decided today in our meeting as a team that we think some experimentation is acceptable. We're not interested in just progressing models that we know for sure work. So we're also going through the process of identifying corporate and community partners as they relate to the modules. So we know that there's some work being done on urban greening, of course, there's sustainable mobility, there's lots of stuff happening within the city and other community partners. And the idea would be not to replicate, but to complement or dovetail with existing programs or to fill gaps. And so having to work through the modules to make sure that we're doing that complementing rather than replicating. And then once we have, a better framework in place, I'll be putting some of this together actually for the director level steering committee next week, hopefully for their endorsement of moving forward. So some of the we know there's some foreseen challenges. We want to ensure that a climate justice lens, especially the work that Beatrice Akoko has been doing in our office, is made sure that, through the full development and implementation of the grant, that we're considering what we're learning through engaging with community partners and through that process. We definitely want the modules to be practical and have a lasting impact where they can. And for some of them, we need them to be simple to execute for community. We know that there will be a challenge of how to incorporate rural communities within the Hamilton boundary. And we know that we want to reach communities that are the least organized to implement changes on their own, ensuring that this is an accessible process so that we're providing the resources for them to be organized and build that social capacity. We've been looking really closely at the Climate Action Grants program from the City of Toronto, both in the sort of size or amount that they give per community group is going to be comparable to what we're thinking. but also they're not funding charities or businesses, folks that have other ways or avenues of receiving funding. They're funding community directly. They have a trustee program, which we've been asking them about how to administer those funds, but really the money is going directly to community organizations to take collective action, which is what we want to be doing as well. We know that there's other ways within Hamilton for nonprofits and other registered groups to be accessing funds through city enrichment and other granting processes. So we have been looking closely at what they've been doing. Um, Maybe a little bit towards what Dawn's question was, and I think it's come up also in other conversations. We know that we that there may be a lot of applicants that are looking to start from an education or awareness and engagement standpoint. And we are seeing that there's a very comprehensive list of successful applicants through the City of Toronto's website, and you can see who was granted. And a lot of them are about different local community groups, making sure that information about climate change and how to take climate action, how to prepare, is being presented in culturally appropriate ways and trauma-informed ways, and in ways that are also empowering and not coming just from a fear-based approach. And so, I think we're learning a lot from reading through some of those applications or the what's posted on the website, but also conversations with City of Toronto staff. Um, and I think finally, we of course want to make sure that there's support for actions in as many wards across the city as possible. Um, so yeah, at this point, the process will be to make sure that we have that framework that's approved through the director level steering committee, and then also to start putting together some modules. Um, yeah, does anybody have questions about our next steps?
So let's can we bring it to sort of like out of the framework and into like an example? Like
Mhm.
what kind of group and what sort of idea
Mhm.
would be a good fit? Is this like,
Yeah, we've talked to, so today, some of the ideas that came up were um, they're, related to the SNAP program that Catherine worked on through TRCA a few years ago, an idea of balcony gardening and backyard gardening, not just as growing your own food as an adaptation measure, but when you are spending more time doing those activities, you're paying more attention to climate, to weather. Another idea that's come up is helping people to make air filters at home. And so there could be a workshop that would allow even translation so that people know how to build them. They get the materials and resources to do that, and then they leave with an air filter. And so the funding would help to cover the cost of those materials, to rent the space to have the meeting, to pay for an honorary for a translator. There could be a climate cafe that's maybe much more built, less about the tools or resources that people are getting, but is more about building social capital and connecting people around climate change. Maybe doing neighborhood asset mapping as well. That would be more like making sure there's child minding, that if it's happening after work, that people are being fed. Like that's where the funding could go, to ensure that people are learning about climate change, learning who their neighbors are, learning how they could set up a network of care, for example. So those are three that are coming forward just from our conversations. There are plenty of others. Urban greening is coming up. Other things around health, and especially with extreme heat. Is that helping to give a sense of what the modules might be?
yeah, a bit. How much money would each grant be looking at?
Yeah. So I think this is still to be determined, but I think we're thinking somewhere in the range of 500 to 5,000, somewhere in that range. I believe the city of Toronto, and then in Victoria, theirs isn't specifically climate. It's more about social capital and neighborhoods, but there's also similarly 500 to about 7,500. So I think we're going to try to aim to be in that range. Is that right, Lynda?
Yeah, I think so, Amy. Yeah, so giving, just smaller grants, even just to support people coming together and getting to know each other, all the way up to, those comparatively larger amounts to
Yeah,
help people to do more on the ground. Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
And then, you know, this is a pilot, but there's definitely ideas already around can a group that is successful with a smaller project that received a smaller amount one year then apply to scale up or to take things in a slightly different direction, apply for more money? Can it be tiered up to, say, 3 tiers? And then when you're in a higher tier and you have had this experience, can you be then a mentor for a group that is just getting started in their first year? I think there's opportunity for that to happen. There's also opportunity for existing groups to be providing some mentorship to communities that there's already that relationship of trust. And so when we are thinking about the climate justice framework groups, the groups that have been participating for the engagement process, they already have there's a group of folks that trust them. That trust is established. They have meeting space, for example. They know how to organize people. So there may be a group of people that they've been engaging with who want to apply for this grant, but that registered charity or that organization could help provide that mentorship. So we're thinking about how that could work as well, because we want these to be successful, but we're also a very small staff team.
And when we talk about these groups here, who are we talking about? Are we talking about like a church group? Are we
Residents?
talking about a neighborhood
No, it
association?
could be. So the thing with a church group is that, if they're, yeah, the idea is that this is meant to be like more like neighborhood associations, groups of neighbors, groups of people living together in an apartment building, um, or a housing co-op. That would be more who we're thinking of. People that,
Like,
or it could be a group that's organized around. They're not a registered charity, but say they're organized around providing um, resources to folks who are unhoused, for example, like if that's making sense, like
and
people
do
who
they need
clubs
to
or community
be
groups.
in one neighborhood? Do they need to, are groups that are citywide available to apply? Like, just
I
trying
think it
to.
would depend on the module. I don't want to say that we would limit it, but what we are going to try to avoid is having people apply for only one residence or private property or household. So the idea is that there should be, the way the City of Toronto manages it is they have a minimum of 3 private residences or households that can apply together to to build some of that community connection and collective action. I don't think we will have to work through some of these. And honestly, Lucia, we don't have final answers on this yet. We're still in that initiating and planning phase. But I could see that right now, my sense is that if there were an application for a collective of people who are spread out throughout the city, but they want to come together because they know each other, because they're from a similar faith background or a cultural group, right? A group of people that have moved here from one country and have all moved as immigrants at one time, maybe. And there's a connection there, but they think that it's important that they, for example, do a climate cafe for a bunch of people in one language. And there's already that relationship of trust. I don't think it matters that they would be spread out across the community, right?
Gotcha. And broadly speaking, what would success from this initiative look like?
Okay, so we know very broadly in terms of our principles, which we're still working on, but we know that people are not prepared for climate change. We know that people may not even recognize that certain weather events and changes that are happening now are climate change. um, or that they do recognize, but they do not have the resources to prepare, um, and and the resources to build social capital that allows stronger resiliency. So success would be projects that have people connect with each other, have people um, prepare collectively and know what to do in extreme weather, for example, or maybe are preparing. Maybe it's not about extreme weather. If in the case of, like, the garden example that was given, if it's about um, sharing and networking around sharing of surplus food, then that would still be about building social capital and connection that can be leveraged in, say, a climate emergency. Um, Success is also going to be helping people to understand or lessening some of their own impact, but that doesn't have to be the primary result. We know that we're hearing that preparedness is the bigger piece here. Um, those are the general things that would be successful. I don't have a more specific answer about that yet. Is that helping to?
Yeah, I
To answer
think
your question.
thanks for walking through the questions from me in terms of like giving people I think a better picture of what
Mhm.
this small grants program is aiming to do and to implement. And I'm gonna throw it out there to anyone else if anyone has any questions and you know I'll maybe also could I say like if anyone has any like very quick feedback that you might want to give.
Definitely,
You don't
yeah,
want to open the
please.
door to, you know, 20-minute monologues, but I think that both Linda and Amy, and I saw that Trevor was on this call as well. Like you folks, I know really care about getting community input and sort of having a two-way, you
Absolutely.
know,
That's why I'm here. Yeah, that's
discussion.
right.
So please, if people want to, you know, chime in on the topic of the community small grants, that would be awesome.
John, did I answer your question? I think Lucia asked a similar one, but let me know if that's not, if I didn't answer it. I'm just seeing in the comments there.
In the chat. Yeah. We'll wait for John to reply. Miriam, I see you have your hand up, so why don't you go ahead?
Yes, I was really happy to hear about this program, Amy. I've been thinking of maybe doing something in my neighborhood, which
Great.
probably does not fall in the category of climate justice or justice seeking community. So I live in
Okay.
Kirkendall.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
but I think it would be really helpful to have some guidance, ideas, just for you to be also a resource to groups that don't necessarily want a grant or need a grant or deserve one, but just ideas of how we can go about this and what we should be thinking about.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Miriam. Thanks for bringing that up. So the modules will certainly be useful, I think, even if you don't apply for the grant or if you think you have your own resources to action those modules. So they'll be widely available. I don't want to discourage anyone from applying if you don't feel it like everyone should apply, right? I think that there still needs to be we want to also have a distribution across all wards, but can you be thinking about an application that would have some sort of justice element, right? Even within your neighborhood. So I'd encourage you to think about that. There will also be not only our modules, but where applicable, we'll be referencing other initiatives through the city that people can make use of, and then also other initiatives that are offered through other programs or nonprofits in the city. So that will be available as well. And then if you do think you have an idea that you want to talk about and you're not sure if you should apply or not, there will be lots of opportunity. There'll be webinars, there'll be opportunities to have a one-on-one call with me to talk through some of it as well. And then after those conversations, you may decide it's actually really great to apply, or you may decide you think you can take it on yourselves, but hopefully with a bit more information about how to do that, or with maybe another partner organization. Am I
Yes, you
answering your
are.
question? Okay,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah, thank you. That's
great.
great.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll pass it on to John next.
I can't hear you, John. I think you might still be
Yeah,
muted.
sorry, you're still on mute.
Good. Okay. Yeah, this has been a thing in my mind. It's like there's supposed to be a community organization at Davis Creek, but it went defunct quite a few years back, I think, right?
Okay.
So these things have been in place, and my interest is like what happens when the grants are over, right? So what's the context that this is like an event or a series of events that is happening in, and what's the strength of the existing community organisation that these people might be in, and how can they carry that further forward once the
Mhm.
grants are over? So,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking of like when the poo hits the fan in America with a hurricane or something like that, and
Hmm.
buildings everywhere are flattened, then it's the local people that get together and do all the emergency response work and a lot of the clearing of
Certainly.
buildings. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we should be aiming towards looking at, without being overblowing the thing and being over dramatic about it. But you know what I mean? Something that's
I
got an ongoing energy and yeah. So it's not, oh well, it's all over. We'll all go home and watch TV. but oh, there's got to be something happening 2 weeks down the line. Oh, great, I'll be there, kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that's a very good consideration, John. And that's something that we're also exploring with, we have a research group with the City Lab semester and resident students who are looking into neighborhood networks of care and that building of social capital. So I really do think with the pilot, we will be doing our best to be looking at initiatives where social capital is being established through this funding and offering of resources. You're right, there's always a challenge of then when there are no more funding opportunities, how what do folks do when they don't have those resources? And we can see there's lots of examples of where initiatives peter out because they don't have the funding to continue. The idea should be, again, to try to have simple projects that can be continued. Um, there will hopefully be a tiered approach in future, although this is a pilot. There's the idea is to try to continue to offer some support and to continue to build capacity. Um, and then the hope is that that social capital has been built so that, as you mentioned, when there is an emergency situation, that has been established. Um, is that addressing your
Yeah,
comment?
yeah, that's good.
Okay.
I see, Linda, you've got your hand up. Do you want to chime in with anything?
Yeah, just to add on to what Amy has shared, I just want to acknowledge, I think, what John is recognizing, and that's that we used to have a neighborhood action strategy, right, with those community
Yeah.
planning teams, and I know Davis Creek was one of them. And here's something I want to share with you. Beatrice and our team organized for us to do a trip into Toronto last week, and we visited the Kiel Community Hub. It's literally it's a resilience hub. So I just want to share with all of you, if you weren't aware of some of what's happening in City of Toronto, and my recollection is that Toronto emulated Hamilton with their Strong Neighborhoods initiative. What they've done in Toronto is they've continued to build on that work so that they've still got the Strong Neighborhoods approach, and they've now got this physical hub in the community. And I'm just going to tell all of you that we were all just like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And they're thinking about the climate resilience side of things, both acute impacts and how do we cope with those, and long term. The hub that we visited, has a community kitchen, it has community meeting rooms. The hub supports city staff, so they have community developers on site who are spending a lot of time in community supporting. This particular hub had 5 or 6 below market rent offices for local not-for-profits who the city identified were helping to provide the supports that that particular neighborhood needs. Really wonderful model. And I think it does, John, your questions around how do we sustain these things? I'm just going to say, hey, we might all want to be paying close attention to what our friends in Toronto are doing, because I share your frustration. In my previous life, at Environment Hamilton, we put a lot of energy into a resilience hub in the Beasley neighborhood. Grants ran out, and it was difficult to keep things going. So we need to be thinking about that. How do we can keep providing resources and support to connect community. But I think there's something to also be said for that kind of model where, I mean, in this case, it's municipal government recognizing that it serves their purposes well too, right? In terms of reaching the people they need to be reaching in community, but giving community a whole lot of supports as well. So sorry, I'll get off my soapbox on that one now. But if you weren't aware of those resilience hubs, worth looking into it. So they're amazing.
Thanks, Linda. Passing it over to Susan.
Hi there. Thank you.
Hi.
This goes back more to Linda's original presentation. Although I'm fascinated by all this community stuff, it's cool. Um, I was struck by the fact that the grid, the Ontario grid, electricity is getting dirtier by the minute. And I'm wondering if the city has any capacity or is there any interest in building our own solar panel grids. Like, can we just get the hell off of the main grid for a lot of these projects? So can we have, a big field, and maybe this could link with neighborhood things, like a field of solar panels, and they grow things under solar panels in other places. And it could start small. Okay, this is how we're going to charge all those battery tools, and this is how we're going to charge the electric buses, and this is how we're going to charge the, fire truck. Like to take ownership of the production of clean energy.
Yeah, I can start, and I know now that I know Trevor is on the call too, he'll probably have more to add on this one as well. When you look at Hamilton's climate action strategy, Susan, there are actions in the community energy and emissions plan that very much speak to, you know, strategic renewable energy initiatives, particularly solar, paying attention to getting solar on top of municipal buildings,
Yes.
moving in that direction. There's also, we're also talking about how do we need residential properties to be paying attention to this too? I'm going
Yeah.
to be honest in saying part of the challenge right now for us is the funding to make that happen. So, we know we have our Office of Energy Initiatives in Public Works has a project all work through to put solar panels on the Harry Howell Arena to start to generate renewable energy. But it's bringing together the funding they need to make that happen. That's been the barrier. So again, I'll say in Hamilton's climate action strategy, there is reference there to, how does the city start to get creative with financing these kinds of things? And so, for us sitting in the climate office, when we do our update every year, we're tapping the folks in finance and saying, where are we at with, green bonds? Is that something we can be pursuing? Because I think there's an acknowledgement, where are we at in terms of making sure every single granting opportunity from other levels of government is being pursued. So we're at that point where more and more of us, and not just us sitting in our office, and, in other divisions in the city, we're talking about where do we get the funding to make these important pieces move forward. So I think fair to say that's been a big part of the challenge right now.
Okay.
But at the same time, it's a shift that the strategy itself recognizes that it's critical that it
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Okay.
Trevor, I don't know if you want to add anything to that piece. I know that you're
Just quickly, and happy to have a follow-up conversation with anyone that's interested.
yeah.
But hi, everyone. Trevor Imhoff. I work with Lynda and Amy. Um, I think there's multiple ways that like we're trying to do it. Um, both from a like grid like not reliance on the grid, and so really that's through like an integrated energy approach. And we've had folks like Hamilton Community Enterprises really working, which is owned 100% owned by the city of Hamilton, working with like industrial steel port land to look at how to bring a more integrated energy approach. And really that's looking at like bi-directional energy flows using like battery energy storage technology, um, which also we're looking at. I think from a Hamilton context, we need to build on our strengths, and that's our district energy system in downtown, because not only will that provide reliance outside of the grid, our current district energy is based on methane gas, and we're looking at feasibility of decarbonizing. But I think the difficulty is, again, provincial regulations and existing electrical capacity issues, which will take, and as Lynda mentioned, will take a lot of money in terms of upgrading, but definitely we look at different avenues of how we could not only decarbonize our local microgrid, but also yeah, just build our resilience from not relying on the electrical grid, as well as from an extreme weather resiliency standpoint as well.
Right. Right. Okay. Thank you very much, both of you.
Awesome. Okay, two more quick questions from Tim and John, and then a couple from the chat. So Tim, go ahead.
Okay, so my plan as a Green Party member is to basically turn like gas power plants into like wetlands and stuff like that, reclaim basically the wild basically as well basically as like deep areas such as like the downtown. Like I'm gonna add a comment on the Beasley like program that was defunct. Not only was it defunct, but at Beasley Park last summer, a homeless encampment moved into the park basically, and my ideas basically is to ban as a politician to ban everything that pollutes basically, replace all the gas powered technology with battery powered technology basically, and ban things like smoking one day in the future basically. Any thoughts on depaving things and turning them into wetlands basically, you know what I'm saying, any strategies that people that you can work towards something like that, you know what I'm saying, turn
Yeah,
things into
Tim,
wetlands. Yeah.
I think Linda can speak a little bit. The city does do a fair amount of depave work already, but maybe you want to share a little more, Linda.
Sure, yeah, and I'm gonna give kudos to Green Venture. I think they're probably the shining star
Yeah, that's where I
way
work.
on.
That's where I work.
Oh, is that right? Okay, excellent. So you know all about the deep pave work Green Venture does. But one piece I will share with you and others, Tim, is that through our team, through the Office of Climate Change Initiatives, we have a senior project manager named Catherine Winkleman, and she has convened a group of city staff to talk about green infrastructure, right? And you know that's wetlands and all those good things. So what that group is doing is they've got some funding that was allocated from the climate change reserve in a previous round, and they're now leveraging that pot to try to get more money from players like Federation of Canadian Municipalities. But they're in a process of assessing the feasibility of doing a depave project in a very urban part of Hamilton, so that they can create what's called a sponge park plaza. So anyone who's been to Montreal will know City of Montreal's got these all over now, and they're designed to be, they're really neat because it's you get rid of paving, but it's functional green infrastructure. So it helps to manage extreme rain flows, for instance, but it also creates a space that people can use and enjoy. So
Yeah,
so stay
cities.
tuned. Yeah, fingers
Yeah,
crossed. We're
yeah,
gonna
like
make this
cities
one a
in
fly.
Japan do that basically, but as you
Tim,
can see with the U.S., there some U.S. cities are backtracking. Basically, it's dead. Thank you.
Hmm.
that is a big challenge right now. I just want to make sure, Tim, that we get time for John's question as well, if that's all right. We'll jump ahead to John. Oh, John, you're on mute.
Okay, well, I stuck something in the chat about like my hometown in Australia, Newcastle, where they built a solar farm on the landfill, right? And now it supplies enough power for the city's electricity needs, which I'm only guessing means the buildings that it operates, right? So it's a zero sum game, yeah? And I heard that there was a whole lot of money dumped on the city when it sold off the power generation thing to Electra, and the best argument for solar is that it's cheaper in the long run, right? So if this is an economic thing, maybe it can be shown to actually save the city a bit of money, right? And my solar that's on the roof, I think it's being amortized over, I don't know, 15 years or something, yeah? And I'm feeding money back, power back into the grid. So the city could do that too at night.
Yeah, lots of opportunities for renewable. And we did touch on solar a bit earlier. I do see a note in the chat from Kenrick as well, just, thinking about things like having a permanent home for the Dundas Repair Cafe, for example, and stuff like that. So I think there's a lot of really cool ideas from community about ways to take back community ownership of things as a way of, sort of, as we were talking about, making things more long term, right? When we take community ownership back of a lot of this stuff, whether it's power generation or knowing your neighbors, repairing things, being resilient, is having things here that we do for each other without having external corporations that we rely on without having fossil fuel companies in the mix, all this sort of stuff. Question from Steve back in the chat, not quite related to the climate change reserve funding, but related to something else you guys did recently, which was your climate forum. You had a talk at the David Braley Center, and just interested, in terms of Ralph Torrey's presentation, what key takeaways OCCI had, or key takeaways you wanted the public that attended that event to have, what future events you're planning on doing. Happy to get anyone. Maybe I'll throw it to Lynda.
Sure, I can start and I'll give others on the team a chance to weigh in too. I'm just going to say very quickly how much I loved that people joined us, and I feel like we need to do more of that. When I looked in the room that night and just socializing with people outside in the reception area, it was a really wonderful mix of city staff, people from the private sector, a whole lot of people from community. I saw a lot of faces I recognized, but there were also lots of faces I didn't recognize. So I want to say, for us in wanting to do a forum, um, that was really a high note for me. And I'm also going to say our vision is to keep on doing this every year. And for future events, we certainly are going to be more organized in engaging our climate change advisory committee and giving us advice and direction on what they think we need to be. We could collectively be doing in an event like that. And I think we'd be looking to, others who joined us this year, feedback on the event. Maybe topics that you think we should collectively be tackling in an event like that. Does it need to be a different format? I'll stop there, but I'll give Amy and Trevor a chance to weigh in on their perspectives on the event.
Sure, you can go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. So I'll hit on the technical first. So the technical aspects of Ralph Torrey's presentation. I've known Ralph for a long time, and I'm glad that he could come do a presentation. Um, his economic forecast was looking at that national grid perspective, and he's based on that economic forecast. He's very hard on going hard on wind energy, and that aligns and looking at net zero by 2050. And I think everyone knows, but just to confirm, is like we also, through Hamilton's climate action strategy, have a target of net zero by 2050. We have targets based on our community energy and emissions plan, targets for scaling up wind power, for scaling up solar. So it really is, how do we take that large national economic forecasting model and distill it down to the local level? And again, I think that's very complicated too, because again, and I wanted to go back to the previous question around, yeah, how do we get away from the ever increasing Ontario grid? That's Ralph's research is part of it. We're also working with like McMaster University around a thermal demand and generation mapping, looking at all different types of thermal energy generation, whether it be from organics and anaerobic digestion, geothermal, thermal networks like district energy, solar for sure, just straight out electrification. Um, and so I think it's about distilling down, and I'm going to be a little blunt here, in that I really liked, and I hope for those that attended could see my kind of enthusiasm for helping to kind of MC the night. But going to be blunt is like, if we're going to implement all of these programs and policies and do education and awareness and climate forums, like we need more bodies, we need more staff. I think we're all feeling pretty, but it's end of November. I know I'm feeling pretty tired. It's been a really busy year, and I think it's going to be an even busier 2026. So I just encourage everyone to help, maybe help advise and help us on how we can better communicate on the education and the forum side, because I do want to do more of them, but staff capacity is pretty is a always a top of mind for us.
Thanks. And Amy, any additional thoughts on that point?
I don't have a lot more to add. I did hear some feedback that for some folks, Ralph Torrey's presentation was pretty technical, and they needed maybe a bit more signposting of what even the graphs they were looking at. Um, but that overall, people were really impressed by how many people turned out. I know that we're going to be sending out a survey to ask for ideas for future themes and presenters as well. And so I think that will be great to hear what people's input is, what they want to learn about in future. Um, so yeah, I'm glad that we're sending it out a bit late, but I'm really glad that we are sending it out because it was, I think, a very big success in terms of the number of people that came, and it would be great to be able to do this again in future.
Sue, do you want to
Yeah,
jump in?
just really quick. So one idea for me that I think, and for a lot of others would be very helpful, is what are other cities, other regions, municipalities doing, and how are they doing it in terms of decarbonizing? So key examples that could possibly be feasible in Hamilton.
I don't know if we're going to get the answer to that succinctly tonight, but Lynda, do you want to maybe share, like, and we hear a lot of talk about Toronto. Is Toronto kind of like the North Star for looking at what cities can do just because they're quite large? Or is there somewhere else in Canada or around the world that you guys are looking for inspiration?
Yeah, I would say Toronto in many ways. We're always looking at what Toronto is doing. But I am also going to say that collectively for us as staff in the Office of Climate Change Initiatives, I think we could provide you with a long list of networks of learning across municipalities. We're part of, it was the Clean Air Partnership. It's now the Climate Action. Is the P still partnership? Is it Climate Action Partnership? Anyway, that entity which facilitates the ability of mainly municipalities to engage on climate. So there in Ontario is a really fantastic way that we're engaging with other municipalities and learning from them. We're also tapped into, I'm just giving you examples of, where we've plugged in with others. We're part of, it's sort of an emerging collective of GTHA municipalities who are talking to each other about climate work and figuring out where are their synergies, where are there points that we could be maybe creatively collaborating to oomph up the efforts that we have underway in our municipalities. And I think we're still trying to figure out what that looks like. I'm on a call tomorrow. It's the Urban Sustainability Directors Network. First time I've been on a call with them, but it would be, climate staff from municipalities across the country. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, Sue, that every opportunity that we can find, we're as staff engaging with others from other municipalities, and I know it's a regular thing for us. I mean, you heard it from Amy tonight. We scan what's happening in other municipalities, and we find a municipality that's doing something really innovative that we want to replicate. We reach out, right? And staff are always, we provide support to other municipalities, and they do the same for us. So that's a really, that's baked into how we do the work that we do. Yeah. But I would also say if you hear about anything that you think we should be thinking about, please, share information because we're always excited to hear about how other communities are approaching doing this work. That's always that's always helpful for us to hear about innovative ways to move the marker forward, I guess I'll say.
And I guess I'll add a quick shout out.
Thank you. Sorry, thank you, Lynda. I just, though I brought that up in response to Amy for ideas about future summits. I wasn't necessarily expecting you to comment on that now, but thank you very much.
And I'm going to add a quick shout out to Stand.Earth and their Safe Cities program. We've done some good work in various aspects with Lana Goldberg there, who coordinates among different cities. So definitely a resource that we all know and that we've had speak to our group before. I think that we are coming to the end of time. I don't know if anyone has any final things that they want to share with our group. Lynda, anything that's coming up, anything that we can do to follow updates from OCCI, get in touch? Like what's the best way to stay tapped into what you guys are doing?
Yeah, so maybe just at least for this year, just a heads up that we do have moving forward to the December 3rd General Issues Committee. It's the last GIC meeting for this year. We do have an information report, just an update report on what we've done and where we're heading with update of Hamilton's climate action strategy and exploring the acceleration of that net zero by 2050 target. So there's that piece, and we can always maybe email out to you, Lucia, and others, and let you know when that info update is just a quick 4-page update is publicly available. Always encourage you to read and consider responding to what you see there so that council knows people are paying attention. So that's one piece. We have a raft of things coming in 2026, including more steps on neighborhood climate action small grants. Trevor has an information update coming in the new year around the carbon budget and accounting framework. Um, that's a big piece, and one, there may be interest here around just learning more about what carbon budgeting is all about and how it can be helpful in doing more impactful work on climate and tracking it more effectively. Trying to think, net zero carbon target for new municipal facilities is coming. So we've got a number of things coming. And next year's an interesting year because it's an election year. So for us, it means stay tuned between January and what July probably, because we need to get all of these pieces in front of council within that period before they really shift into full-on election mode. So, but in terms of staying in touch with us, we are actively talking about some way to push out a regular update sort of email, but that's still in the works. So stay tuned. If we do move on that, we'll reach out to you and figure out a way to get Hamilton 350 folks on that list. And we do have a general, and I'm hoping maybe Trevor or Amy can stick it into the. Oh, good. Thank you, Trevor. Yeah. See, Trevor's pointed out that we've got a climate change advisory committee meeting next week, and those are live streamed. You can attend in person too if you'd like, room 264 at City Hall. We also have a general email address. So Trevor and Amy, if one of you can remember, I always forget if there's a dot between the climate and change, but it's climatechange@hamilton.ca is a way you can also reach us, and we collectively monitor that inbox if you want to connect with us, and we can, if you've got a specific question or something you want more information on, we can direct you to the appropriate member of our team or, a staff member beyond our team, if that makes most sense.
I think both work. Either climate change, all one word, or climate.change.
Does the dot work? Okay.
Lucia, I'd actually just have a quick question for you on the Climate Change Advisory Committee as a chair of a working group. I mean, my understanding is working groups are always looking for additional expertise. So, I mean, just interested to hear, Lucia, your thought is like, how can this group help you, for example, or other chairs of the individual working groups to help advise city staff on climate-related matters?
Well, I mean, the fossil fuel resistance group has been pretty active in advising me and other folks on the Climate Change Advisory Committee when we were working on green building standards. I think that was a good example of collaboration between community groups and working groups. I think that we've got definitely sights set on electrification as a big opportunity, renewable energy generation as a big opportunity for the city of Hamilton. And I think that everyone in this group, as you heard, we kept coming back to that theme. I think that we are going to be having a lot of people who are looking for ways to advocate for the city of Hamilton to do something a little bit bold and shake it up. Very briefly, you mentioned Hamilton Community Enterprises as being a model of sort of a local energy system. And that's really cool. Their gas-fired peaker plant has a capacity similar to a commercially available GE Workhorse wind turbine today because our electrification technology has gotten so much better since the early 2000s. So I think there's a lot of ways in which solutions that exist today that are fired on gas can be replaced with, at the end of their asset life. And we can do it in a way that actually makes energy cheaper for the city, for local institutions, for local Hamiltonians. So stay tuned for a lot of that coming from us. And also stay tuned to everyone in our mailing list at what you guys are going to be presenting in the new year. Just very quickly before we wrap up, highlights from next year. We've got climate justice framework coming forward from you guys, and I think a couple other reports as well.
Yeah, for sure. So an update early in the new year on carbon budget and accounting framework, and then ultimately, Trevor, I think in the spring, final report on that piece. Our annual, our Hamilton's Climate Action Strategy annual progress update, June, fingers crossed. So that will be moving forward. We do one of those every year, whole lot of detail on how things are going with implementation of actions. Our climate change reserve cycle will be front-ended into 2026. So there'll be a report with recommended city-led initiatives happening earlier in the year because of that, because we'll want to get that in front of council before July. Oh gosh, I'm trying to think. What am I missing?
Well, and we'll also be sure to share any resources around these community small grants to our entire mailing
Yes.
list, so that
Yeah,
people are aware that
absolutely.
these opportunities are out there. Come with your innovative neighborhood solutions.
Yeah, that'll be hugely important for us to have entities like Hamilton 350 help us to get the word out about that opportunity for those grants.
Great. Well, I think that we'll probably leave it there for today. Thank you, everybody, for sticking in for a very long call. And I know some folks already had long days of meetings looking over at you guys, city staff. So thanks for taking the time to come and share with us some of what's been going on at OCCI. And I know you've got a lot of support from the people on this call. And we've got a lot of input and ideas and hopes as well. If you're looking for more input from us, you'll know how to reach us.
Thanks, everyone. I just want to say
Thank
thank
you.
you so much for the